promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. That's one small step for man.
People will return to the people, and so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you and slay you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men, with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men, you are men.
Welcome to the Rock Worldwide Show here on WSHO Sunshine 800 AM. I am your host, Trey Roberts, and this is the Rock Worldwide Show. Glad you joined us, hoping you'll be with us all throughout this hour. I think we've got a good show for you. Some of you may disagree. That's okay. This is still America, where you can have just a wonderful opinion and you can hold to it, so hoping you'll be with us throughout the program. Got a lot of things to get to. I want to challenge you on something, and this may be something that you find helpful. I don't know. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. What I want to challenge you to do is maybe over the next week, challenge you to not pay any attention to social media. And don't watch any news for just 1 week. Just try it after this show. Just shut it down until next week when we do this show again. And just come here on Saturday with not knowing anything that went on except what you hear when you interact with people, instead of interacting with either your phone or the computer or a website or the news. And just see how you feel. See if you feel any different. See if you sense the anxiety rising up in you of not being plugged in all the time. See if you feel better because you've unplugged. Just do it for a week. Try it. Come here, and if you like coming here, getting a quick review of the week of news from here at the Rock Worldwide Show with yours truly, well then maybe, just maybe, you would find it in your heart to maybe tell some other people about what you're doing, how you feel, and the benefits that this show is to you and for you. That being said, let's jump into it. It was another. By the way, if you want to be a part of the program, you can call 504-527-0800. You can go to WSHO.com. Jump in the chat room there. It's wide open. I think we got one viewer in there right now. Jump in the chat room and make yourself known. And then also you can go to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook and watch the program live or archive. You can go back and watch any of the shows that we've done in the past. We use social media as a repository for the program in perpetuity. Hopefully someday in the future, my kids maybe can go back and look and see what the heck was going on in America during this crazy, wild time that we went through. And they can hear their old man pontificate in real time. And who knows, maybe they'll learn something, maybe they won't learn anything at all. I don't know. But let's get into this. Another really bad week. You know, last week we talked about the Buffalo shooting, we talked about the California shooting, we talked about the Dallas shooting. You had a white supremacist who shot up a grocery store mostly full of black people. You had a Chinese man shoot up a Taiwanese doctor and others in a church on Sunday. You had a black man go into a Korean-owned spa and shoot up a bunch of Asians. You had a lot of hatred last week. This week you had a shooter come out and, as everyone knows by now, killed 19 children. I think total deaths are upwards of 21, 22 at this point. Really, a lot of really bad things have transpired. It looks like there was a lot of police and a lot of border patrol tactical team errors. There were obviously signs that you and I can look at this and hear how this young man was living. Horrible family life, drug use, violent video games, hanging out, being a jerk, getting into fights, cutting his face, shooting people with BB guns at night, egging people's homes. More so than just doing basic shenanigans from a young person. As we talked about last week, all of these targets are soft targets. We need to harden soft targets, even if it just means stop advertising places that are no gun zones. Especially where there's places where people gather together, movie theaters, post offices, schools, whether they're elementary, middle school, high school, junior high, it doesn't matter. Where mass shootings are not happening are at gun shows, or at police stations. They're not happening in places where there's the likelihood that this person, upon opening fire the first time, is going to receive multiple rounds of fire in return. If you want to know what the nation would look like if all the guns were taken away, all you have to do is look at the places where gun laws are the most strictest currently. This is really a common sense thought process, even as emotionally charged as it is, because these precious little angels had their lives snuffed out. The guy bought the guns legally. He had no mental health record that would have put him into the NICS database. He had no prior criminal record that would have caused him to get flagged. Yes, it sounds like local police knew of his family. His grandfather couldn't have a gun in the house, didn't like guns, he's a convicted felon. That wouldn't have been a support. I mean, the guy turned 18, and people say, well, we need to raise the gun limit to 21. Hey, I get that. I get that it makes sense because we say, hey, we don't let young people drink until they're 21. Show me in the Constitution where it says that we have a constitutional right to alcohol. The Second Amendment doesn't give people the right to keep and bear arms. If you read, this is why I taught on the Constitution for 12 weeks with you guys. Because it's so frustrating for people to say things and it's completely out of ignorance. When you read the Second Amendment, it says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The definite article says it all. The word the. The right to keep and bear arms. That means the Second Amendment indicates a pre-existence of the right. Well, what was the pre-existence that the Founding Fathers were recognizing in the Second Amendment? Natural law, going back to the 15th century, like the 1400s, Catholic scholars, people like Thomas Aquinas, and others that, if I said their names, you wouldn't recognize them anyway because they're lesser known. They began talking about things during the English Reformation, during the Protestant Reformation, during the Counter-Reformation. They began talking about these ideas known as natural rights. These rights that were inherent to all human beings This is the understanding in the Declaration of Independence, where it says that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights among these self-evident truths. Now, there's a ton. Now, yes, they said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but there's a ton of them. And the one that applies here is the right to self-defense. The right for you that when your person is threatened, that you can thwart the threat of violence against you with an equal or greater amount of violence. You're not supposed to perpetrate violence upon another person. That's a hateful thing. That's an unloving thing. That's an unchristian thing, an unchrist-like thing. I believe we're called to be peacemakers. I believe that we are called, and when we say peacemakers, not just people who live lives getting along with everyone and are pacifists, but I really truly believe that the kingdom ethic is that we are not supposed to kill fellow imagers. Every human being that is alive, that has ever been alive, or that will ever be alive, was created or is or will be created in the likeness and image of God with a specific intention from the beginning of creation in the mind of God. To be a part of God's family, to partner with Him. It doesn't matter their ethnicity. It doesn't matter their geography. It doesn't matter where in the timeline of humanity they were born. Every human being is created in the likeness and image of God, whether they have already come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ or not. Therefore, we are not allowed to other any human being based off of their belief system. If a person chooses to reject the truth of Jesus Christ as the way, truth, and life, we are still not allowed to treat them as an other or to treat them as an enemy. Because if we treat them as an enemy, we're still supposed to love them. The ethic of love is not just for people we agree with. The ethic of love is not just for people that we seem to be able to get along with, have belief systems similar to ours. We're not allowed to other people. So it's one of those things where if someone is, and this argument goes all the way back hundreds of years before the idea of America ever became a thing. But by the time the Founding Fathers are codifying the natural rights of human beings, as they see those natural rights being violated by the King of England. And the English have gone through their whole thing with the Magna Carta changing from Rex Lex into Lex Rex, where the king is law versus the law is king. We become a nation of laws in the United States and not a nation of men. We don't get our rights from government. We get our rights from God. If our rights are given to us by government, then government can take away those rights. But if our rights come from us from outside of government and from outside of other human beings, then no man can ever take those rights away from us. And so the founders went further to say that it is the role of government. It is the reason that men institute governments to protect other men from being able to take away those rights. And the reason that they didn't like democracy, or what they called mob rule, was because democracy becomes the tyranny of the majority. That if you can conjure together 50% plus one, you can keep in despotism, in tyranny, the minority 49%. And so the founders said we need a representative government. We need a government that is of, for, and by the people, and that we will create laws and those laws will protect some men from tyranny over other men. Lincoln went further to say that by the time the Civil War comes around, that this idea of liberty and tyranny, some people take liberty to mean that they can do whatever they want. Don't anyone stop me. Don't anyone, tell me what to do. Liberty is being able to live a life responsibly, legally, ethically, but pursuing what I choose to pursue or not in my life. And for others, tyranny became the liberty to do to others whatever it is that I feel is right to do and while I'm in power. This idea of liberty and tyranny became a very fluid thing by the time the Civil War broke out. So all of the politicization that is happening around the shooting in Texas, it should make us stop. We should all recognize that there is something not right. Young people picking up guns and killing innocent people at a fairly effortless level is far less to do with the issue of guns and far more to do with the issue of societal rot. Being raised in poverty, being bullied and picked on, being a part of public education, government-run schools, the ineffectiveness of those institutions, the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of the home. These things are causational and the things that we should be talking about at a greater level. This is why, as Christians, we have a voice into this particular subject in this particular time. Or at least we should have a prophetic voice speaking truth into this, and not a political one. One that talks about the importance of the strength of family, of husbands loving their wives as Christ has loved the church, of wives respecting their husbands, of raising up children in the love of the Lord, of parents and adults being great examples for children, that the children can see how they're to grow up and be. They can see the love of Christ inside the family and it pour out into their community and neighborhood, in through their churches, lived communally together under this one banner of the kingdom of God in Jesus Christ. I'm all for the hardening of schools and better door policies and better security at schools. I'm all for those things. But I keep coming back, when I think about the founders, James Madison said that the type of government that has been laid out in the Constitution for the United States of America would only be successful if we had an educated and moral citizenry. And educated not like they have to go to college, educated in that they understand the purposes of our government. I'm a conservative because I want to conserve the institutions of our government as laid out by the founders. I'm not a conservative because I want to be MAGA. I'm not a conservative because I want to be, because I'm just against Democrats or just against progressivism. I'm a conservative because I believe that there are institutions that are correct, that they're right, because I understand, I believe, I have a fairly decent understanding of what the founders were intending in reading their words, in reading their arguments, in reading their debates, and then reading the documents that they gave us in the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution. This isn't a difficult read. You can get a pocket copy of it and read it over a cup of coffee. I do think we need to think about the predicament that we find ourselves in, where cheap guns that are powerful beyond the imaginations of even the founders, in hands dumber than the founders ever could have conceived of. And when you take those guns and those dumb hands and you sling them over the skinny arms of disaffected small town teenagers, you're almost ensuring a weekend slaughter in high crime inner cities. And that's what's so frustrating to me, is that we call for gun control when these 19, 20, whatever it is now, little babies are innocently slaughtered on a school day in the middle of nowhere America. But every frickin' day and every weekend in 15 to 20 of our worst inner cities in America, you got young people being killed at much higher rates. And these people don't go run out there and do press conferences. Beto O'Rourke's moronic self, that he's not going out in front of Mayor Lori Lightfoot and calling her, a sick SOB and all this other stuff for the carnage that ensues in her city week in and week out. I mean, is it because these are just black people killing black people? Black kids killing black kids, and they're all criminals? We don't care about the criminal element? Is that what it is? I mean, I get that there's somewhat of a difference when you have these little fourth graders and teachers who are mowed down by a deranged lunatic. I get that there's a difference aesthetically in drug dealers killing other drug dealers, but it's not always the case. There's oftentimes little babies that are innocently caught up in the spray of bullets. And it happens all the time. I guess my point is nothing is right about this. It looks like that it looks like that there was a lot of mistakes made by the police. You had a border patrol tactical team that was told to stand down by the chief of police because they thought that this guy just put himself into a room and barricaded himself in there by himself, which means that the tactical team stood in the hallway for almost an hour while these little babies bled out. Some of these children probably could have been saved if the tactical team who arrived there earlier than expected, a border patrol tactical team, like a SWAT team, they were inside the hallways and told to stand down while the local police department was outside trying to keep the parents of those same kids from getting into the school. It's not good. And law enforcement should be investigated. The law enforcement response here needs to be investigated, and heads need to roll if these reports that are coming out now show that their ineffectiveness and their inaction made some major mistakes. If they made the kind of mistakes that are being coming out and reported now, then we need to hold them accountable. They need to be held accountable in the most severe way. Let's go to the phone lines real quick. Let's go to Phil the Patriot, the Cajun Buccaneer. Phil, welcome to the Rock Worldwide Show.
Hey, good morning, brothers and sisters. Listen up. This is gross malfeasance and all this is going on here. These police officers that did this, that stood down, they're guilty of malfeasance in office. I could not have listened to my commander if I'd ever told me to stand down. I would have rushed in there and risked my life and went after that guy. I would have told my captain to kiss my what. Because I would do my job no matter what, brothers and sisters. This is horrible what happened here. And they're not the only ones that's guilty of malfeasance in office. The people in the White House are guilty of malfeasance in office. Exactly. Because they're committing treason, sedition, sabotage, and espionage against the peaceful peoples of the United States of America. And I can tell you, those police officers ought to be ashamed of themselves for what they didn't do. They should have ran in there right away. And so many things happened before, when he stood there for an hour before they went in there. I mean, what's going on here? I mean, has this been all orchestrated, pre-orchestrated? Has this all been pre-planned? This guy Ramos, was he a legal alien? I mean, what the hell is going on here in our country? I mean, this is terrible. This has got to stop. I mean, these families are grieving. I lost a lot of family members last year myself, but I didn't lose 19 children and 2 adults. You know, I lost 4 children and 5 adults last year. You know, and now they're just gone. I'm alone all the time. And I'm getting used to it. But brothers and sisters, can you imagine how terrible this is for those families that lost those 19 children? And they didn't go in there and take this guy out? I mean, who left the back door open? I mean, what's going on here? Brothers and sisters, you need to demand accountability to the police officers, to these people that's ruling our country, the President of the United States, all the way down to the captain and the sergeant and the privates or the police departments. This is horrible what's happening here. This is a terrible nightmare. It's got to come to an end. Wake up, America, amen.
Thank you, Philip. Appreciate the phone call. I agree with Philip in most of the stuff. If you watch the video, you'll see the things that I didn't agree with. But thank you, Philip. I agree. It's horrible, and it's got to stop. All right, let's get into the rest of the news that you may not have heard about this week. It looks like on Monday, this is great. North Korea, the representative, rather, from North Korea is taking over as the head of the United Nations Nuclear Disarmament Working Group. Huh, that's great. So North Korea is now in charge of the 65-nation group working on nuclear policy and de-escalation. I mean, that's brilliant. I was going to hire today. I just hired a bobcat to walk my dog. So I think that's gonna work out just as well. I don't know if you heard about this, but new home sales are down by 17%. So we're starting to see the impact of Bidenflation, and rising interest rates. So after we had a sales spike starting late in 2020 or whatever, new home sales are falling fast. So now might be the time if you're going to buy. Remember, buy low, sell high. So down 17%. Looks like it could be a buy opportunity. Those of you who have been looking to possibly buy over the last bit of time, it looks like the height of the market has peaked and it's getting back to a little bit of equilibrium, or back to a little bit of normalcy. It looks like the name of the game right now is name games. And so we've seen this with the abortion leak and all the abortion right debates that are roiling through our country right now. It's happening with gun control. And what progressives do, and they've always done this, even the phrase progressive was used in the early 20th century to sort of mask the idea that what they really believed in was 19th century socialism, 19th century Marxist Leninist socialism, communism. So they called it progressivism, and it was kind of cool in America because you couldn't run around in America claiming to be a communist or a socialist or a Marxist, but you could say you were, well, I'm a progressive. And of course, the progressive movement took off in the early 20th century. But the American left, they continue to fight the good fight. So here's an example. In San Francisco School District this week, they dropped the word chief from all job titles so as to avoid any implication that they're referring to Native American chieftains. So no matter that the word actually comes from the French chef, that comes from the Latin caput, but meanwhile, Vox News argues that natural gas also has to be renamed to make it sound less clean, less friendly, We're just using natural gas. So these activists have seen what works to bring revolution to Swarthmore new student orientation programs. And they know that this is the change that America needs. Unbelievable. In some good news, college enrollment continues to fall. Even without COVID restrictions on campus, young Americans look like they're still opting out of college at a dramatic rate. Enrollment as of spring 2022 is down 4.7% from a year ago. This according to new data from the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. Since the start of the pandemic, the shift is even more dramatic. Total undergraduate enrollment has fallen by 9.4%. One thing that's real about the quote-unquote hashtag cancel student debt movement is pain. The onerous loans from overpriced schools stuffed with bureaucrats have crippled young people. And a lot of teenagers today, they're looking at the deal and they're thinking, hey, you know, maybe there's something better. And with a very strong job market right now, there just often is. We had a young man come to the house and he used our house as kind of a staging place for his wedding recently. And he's got a degree in accounting. Got some military service, was deployed overseas as kind of a special service attache to local government in the places that he was deployed. And I asked him what he was doing, and he was working for like a logistics officer for a crane company. Wasn't even using his accounting degree, and primarily because he could, in the long run, potentially make more money using his accounting degree. But if he started now, he would start at a level that is just unacceptable to him and his new wife and their goals and what they want to do. So he's working now at a company that's paying him really good money, and he's doing work that he feels more than capable of being able to do. The drop in enrollment actually makes me a little bit hopeful, because colleges and universities can easily get better. And one of the ways that they can start getting better is by scrapping a lot of unnecessary administrators, and now they're finally being incentivized to do so. Another piece of good news, in my humble opinion, is the U.S. birth rate is up by 1%. Now look, that's not a lot, okay, but I'll take it, because we had years of steadily declining to reproduce. Americans may actually be getting it up for the task. Kind of see what I did there. Or at least our fall is plateauing. This according to the CDC. So natural birth rates within the country, citizen birth rates, need to go up for any country to have long-term prospects of economic, mostly economic, but political, economic, geopolitical, the whole nine. You don't need to have an open door policy in your country if you don't need to have an open door policy if your population is doing its job. So get out there, America, and get to reproducing. I didn't make a if you're watching the show on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, I didn't make a lower third for this one, but everybody knows if you ride New York's subway system, I mean, it's pretty grim. It's had horrible reputation since in my entire lifetime. I've never heard anybody ever say, "Oh man, love riding the subway. It's so clean and not gross and safe." No one ever says that. But there's a new man that's been shot lately. Again, this is sad, but Andrew Abdullah shot and killed another passenger in the middle of the day, and completely randomly this week. Abdullah, fresh from shooting, this person walked out of the crowded subway, free as a bird, apparently unmolested by the NYPD or any fellow New Yorkers, a Fendi-clad pastor showed up to the precinct in a Rolls Royce to negotiate the shooter's surrender at one point. But apparently, negotiations failed and the shooter was arrested on the way to his lawyer's office. If you want to know who the person that was shot was a Goldman Sachs employee named Daniel Enriquez. And I want to say that the person, a Brooklyn bishop rolled up to the 5th precinct in a Rolls Royce. I'm trying to find the article right now of who the bishop was, who this man of God was, who's wearing Fendi clothes. Here we go, got him right here. Bishop Lamore Whitehead. Lamore Whitehead, apparently a controversial Big Apple clergyman, told reporters outside the precinct that he was startled when 8 officers, gun drawn, ran by me and made Abdullah get on the floor. This man is innocent, Whitehead said of Abdullah. His family has untold paperwork showing that he has mental health issues. As he states, he doesn't remember anything. Unbelievable who our men of God sometimes decide to defend and roll around in a Rolls Royce. But in a similar story, Black Lives Matter issued their quote-unquote transparency report, and it's about as fun as you would expect. I had a favorite line item in this report. If you go check it out, just type in BLM transparency report. Quote unquote, here's the line item of the transparency report that I don't know why, I just felt it was interesting. Remember, this agency collected billions of dollars. Okay, here we go. Quote, $3 million of STEMI, S-T-I-M-I, STEMI COVID relief funding given directly to black people. Close quote. Let me say that again because it's just $3 million of STEMI COVID relief funding given directly to black people. Huh. Well, that clears everything up for me. If you gave STEMI COVID relief funding to black people to the tune of $3 million, you're a great organization. Hey, have you ever heard of immigration? Never heard of her. Now, I don't know if y'all remember this, but maybe a couple of months ago now, Kamala Harris was tasked by the Biden administration to fix immigration in the United States, to fix the border. I mean, she was going down there. She laughed. She laughed when asked that she had been to the border. Of course we've been to the border. She hadn't actually been to the border. Kamala Harris is now quietly sloughing off the hard part of her job. All immigration-related activity has seemed to disappear from her public schedule. Now, look, in a lot of ways, I don't blame her, okay? First, because, work, jobs, they're exhausting, okay? I do a radio show on Saturday. I work at a construction company, I got a family. I get it. Sometimes on Sunday, I take naps, right? Also, your only option to remain a good progressive is actually by shouting, "Open borders!" and then run away. Otherwise, handling immigration actually requires diving into a quagmire of issues whose solutions demand, at best, cold pragmatism. I mean, it's an especially unpleasant task when the same detention practices that were 5-alarm fires under President Trump are now just considered, you know, totally normal, totally humane. You know, we're never gonna discuss them because, you know, Joe Biden, good old Joe's compassionate, you know, and so Vice President Harris has looked at the issue long and hard, studied the maps, spoken to the experts, and she's decided, thanks, but no thanks. Let's go to the phone lines, and I believe this is Rusty on line 1. Rusty, welcome to the Rock Worldwide Show.
Yes. Listen, I didn't really want to call up and say the same thing that you said, talked about a lot in the program, and then Philip talked about it.
It's all right. It makes me feel good that if you guys think that I'm actually saying the right things, I feel good. It's when you say that I'm off my rocker that makes me sad, and I have to go home and eat my woes away.
It's unusual because here, you and I and Philip, and believe it or not, even the media, which I'm usually against, all saying the same thing about this, what the police or the legal law officials did in Texas. But I don't think, like the guy who did the press conference yesterday, that he said in hindsight, you know, this was a mistake. This was a totally disaster. I'm for funding the police, giving them bigger raises. What happened here is inexcusable. It's totally inexcusable. There was a girl, for what I heard the guy say yesterday in the press conference, there was a girl who was calling from inside the classroom with her phone. And she was saying, come help us, please help us. They knew he was not just locked in a closet in some room. They need, as I think you said earlier, they need to be held accountable. And I know I sound redundant from what you already said and Philip said, but I thought, let me add my voice to it because I feel like this cannot happen again. Just, you know, and that's really all I want to say. I think we have to hold these people accountable. I'm behind the police. I said yesterday on Bob's show, I think they should get paid twice as much for the job they're doing. But when they mess up this bad, they need to be held accountable. And so these things don't happen again. And I just wanted to say that because I know you're coming close to the end of your show, and I felt like, hey, let me add my voice to it. And on your usual day for total harmony, I think, from some of these sources. And I'm glad you took a lot of time to talk about it today. So that's about it, Trey. Just wanted to add my 2 cents to that situation.
Thank you, Rusty. I appreciate it, brother. Have a good one, and happy Memorial Day weekend to you, sir. 504-527-0800 if you want to be a part of the program. And listen, to Rusty's point, and we were kind of joking there, a little tongue-in-cheek in the beginning of his phone call, but listen, you know that you're in the grips of an ideology when what you believe and what you, like, your opinion about one issue, you can pretty much predict a person's opinion on other issues. That's how you know that you have an ideologue. The fact that sometimes we disagree, you, the listener, me, the host, means that we're actually thinking for ourselves. We're actually using our brains. We're not just accepting talking points. We're not trying to filter everything through a rigid ideology. We are trying to look at individual issues, individual circumstances, individual situations, and we're trying to reason and logic and use wisdom through all of that. And I think that's a good thing. Is it a great day when you have people like Phil and Rusty and myself and maybe many of you out there that can agree on a topic like this? Maybe there's even some people on the left that can agree with us on certain things. I think it is. I think it's a good thing. It shows a common humanity. I think we need to kind of soak those days in, if you will. All right, getting back to a couple of more stories that I want to get to before we close. Hey, do you remember Cambridge Analytica? Yeah, you probably don't. But The Washington, D.C. Attorney General has now sued Mark Zuckerberg this week for the 2015 scandal about data privacy. Now, if you don't remember Cambridge Analytica, that's fine. This wasn't, I don't think we talked about it very much. We tried to talk about it a little bit, but this was, remember, this was like 7 years ago. And this was still early on when we were trying to understand about data. What is data? How are they mining our data? Why is data so valuable to these companies and all that other good stuff? This was a part of the series of panics that more or less followed President Trump's election in 2016, in which everyone looked for an ulterior explanation for his victory, other than Hillary Clinton was a crap candidate. Okay? The story was about a small, kind of garbage little company in the UK that scraped Facebook user data without proper permissions in order to give people like Trump's campaign manager at the time, Steve Bannon, special insight into voters. But since then, its influence and even some of the wrongdoing that this company was blamed for has really been debunked. But I think it's interesting. Washington, D.C., no friend to conservatism, is suing Mark Zuckerberg, owner of Meta, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, no friend to conservatism. So a little progressive on progressive crime is always interesting. You know what? Neither party in America today really represents America on the issue of abortion. You have Republicans now saying their real opinions on abortions. And to be honest with you, those opinions are really to the far right of most Americans. This is best seen in the recent primary success of Herschel Walker, former running back in the NFL and the USFL. Georgia Bulldog great, Heisman Trophy winning, one of the greatest athletes America has ever produced. He was running for, or he is running for Senate in Georgia. It looks like he's going to run against, I forget the pastor, the radical pastor. That's the Democrat currently holding the seat. But he wants a total ban on abortion with no exceptions. And to many of us, that may sound like a really great thing. Again, this may get into a little bit of a name game, but you know, the Democrats, they want abortion up until it seems like 9 years of age. You know, they want time outside the womb to contemplate and think about whether or not they should just choke this baby. And so really, you know, don't look to a party to represent your view on abortion. Think about it on your own, like we talked about here on the show in Ryan Bunge's new book about religion and politics. You're probably like most people, you're somewhere in the middle in how you think about this particular topic. Good old President Obama is still out there agitating as he does best. The former president this week said on Twitter, quote, "As we grieve the children of Uvalde today, we should take the time to recognize that 2 years have passed since the murder of George Floyd under the knee of a police officer," close quote. Seriously? Like that's your voice into this horrible tragedy, is George Floyd? He then goes on to plug his nonprofit. Now, it was naive, but I really thought Obama, you know, I really thought Obama had a chance. Let me put it that way. He had a chance to do something really great. And of course, he was a horrible president. And I really thought that, you know, this cool, sort of suave, well-spoken, articulate character, maybe he even had an opportunity to do something post-presidency. Maybe he wouldn't be quite so partisan. But man, instead, he sort of elevated Harry and Meghan Markle, you know, complete with like this Spotify deal that recently ended, and he had a Netflix deal. I mean, look, he's gotten way, way worse. And keep an eye on Michelle, because I think I think the Obamas have eyes on the Oval Office. You know, the left doesn't have a lot of pride in police officers like a lot of us on the right do, but they do have a lot of pride for LGBTQ people. So what if more gay cops came out and came forward? Or what if we made cops more gay? Like YMCA gay? Then maybe like we could get more, we could kind of skim off some of the left and make them a little more cop friendly, right? I mean, straight people who've decided en masse that they're queer have basically taken over the whole LGBTQ IA++, two-spirit, moon spirit, shebang, and turned it into like a radical political identity that really has nothing to do with gay or lesbians anyway, okay? Let me say that again. Straight people who have basically decided in huge numbers that they're queer, Q. They've taken over the entire LGBTQ+, IA, shebang, two-spirit, moon spirit, tree spirit movement. Pride parades over the years have been banning uniformed police officers from marching. So you see pride for all, but not gay police officers. People, police officers should be ashamed for their work, according to the pride parade people. So it's unclear if this extends to men dressed as the village people. But here's a good response from the mayor of San Francisco. In solidarity with the cops, she won't march in the pride parade. And the fire department won't either. So hey, no pride for you. No pride for you, gay cops. And so, yeah. I think if we make cops gay again, like the village people did, then the left might like cops again. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe not. You've heard of long COVID, but it might not be a thing. A new study from the National Institute of Health Clinical Centers gives some comfort to many Americans who have had and recovered from COVID and though worried about long-term damage. Although people entered a new study self-reporting terrible long-term health effects from COVID infection, things like fatigue and memory and concentration impairment, etc., scientists did not find any actual evidence of long-term damage to the bodies or memories as a result of COVID. Then again, there's a scary new report from the CDC which found that 1 in 5 COVID-19 survivors experienced some sort of long COVID. Now, I seriously hope the NIH study is right and the CDC study is wrong. But we here at the Rock Worldwide Show, we know people that have recovered from COVID, and the assessment here is, it wasn't a great week for the people that have got it, but never again will I doubt the scientific brilliance of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. As you heard yesterday, I believe, on the Current Word program with Bob Carvajal? Yeah, Carvajal. Voting has surged in Georgia. Now, I told you that there's a lot of good news. So after breathless stories and a White House panic telling all Americans that Georgia's Election Integrity Act of 2021 would basically be the end of democracy, it turns out that voting is surging there this year. 3 times as many Georgians voted in the recent election than in 2018, and more people voted than they did even in 2020, which was a presidential election year. That's a good thing. It looks like they've cleaned up so much of their stuff. Republican Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who rode a wave of rage over school closures, just announced that he has restored the voting rights to about 3,500 ex-felons, continuing a very good program. This program is ongoing and it predates Youngkin, and people can apply online to have their rights restored. I think that people who have served their time, have paid their debt to society, and are back into everything that they need to do, I think it's good that they get an opportunity to get some of their rights back and vote. I think that's a good thing. Last thing, this is Memorial Day weekend, and remember, this is the weekend that we remember the sacrifice that people have made. This is not the weekend of service. This is the weekend of sacrifice. When you talk about sacrifice in closing here, just remember this. The people that we are talking about, the memories that we are memorializing, that conversation is one that happens where we have to supply both the questions and the answers. And I just want to leave you with this final thought on this Memorial Day weekend. Are we the people that they thought about? Are we worthy of the sacrifice that they paid? Are we living up to their sacrifice? Would they be proud to have laid it all on the line and sacrificed it for you and for me and for this country? We have to supply the answer. We have to supply the question. You have to fight progressivism wherever it rears its ugly head. We'll see you next time here on the Rock Worldwide Show.